They're scared to death. The unknown scares them. Little do they know that from within are all the answers they need. That when that organism turned on and every cell lights up, they've got something they didn't know before. But it's a God-made law that that's the way it is. There are many ways in the chiropractic techniques of determining what to do. We have those that have become so scientific that if you moved your foot a quarter of an inch or missed the X-ray analysis by 1/4 of a centimeter, you haven't done the job. I can tell you that there are many signs that the innate intelligence of the body is projecting all the time that you can pick up with your educated brain and go along with it. And you would be amazed at some of the research we're finding as to what to do and where and why and how fast it can be done. There comes a time when your mind doesn't try to tell the patient's innate what to do, but goes along with it, and we're working that out. No science in the world can do that. The medical man looks you over and he thinks your gallbladder's bad, or he's going to treat the gallbladder. The most marvelous diagnostic tool that's ever been invented, according to some of the best medical men, is the patient's own finger. Because he can say, it's right there, doc, where it's hurting me. Isn't that great? There's the tool that counts, the patient's finger. When that patient comes into your office, sick and dying, and he learns that something can be done from within, his hope is renewed. He's better already. And many times when you tell the story in the chiropractic office as to what chiropractic really is, the patient will say, Doctor, I feel better already. Isn't that wonderful? You haven't done anything yet except telling the truth, and the truth is what makes you free. There's no question about that. And when you talk about the intelligence of the body and how it works, it isn't anything you have to hide under a bushel. It isn't anything you have to be ashamed of. It's something that people want to know if it's presented properly. Years ago, when I taught at the Palmer School, I had people in my class like Sid Williams. A lot of the stuff he stole from me he's using now down at DE, you know. We used to have in our classes, and I taught hygiene, but that was really only an undercover, you know, for what I was really teaching. And we'd put a table up on the platform, and then I'd designate some girl in the class to be the nurse that would introduce the patient. And then I'd have somebody in the class act as doctor. And I'd have one or two patients in the group come up. Now, the doctor didn't know what the patient was going to complain of, but it was going to be a patient with symptoms. And so we were going to put them together. Boy, oh boy, what an education. Try it sometime. Here's the doctor sitting back. You know, he's going to get a cigarette out, and he's got his feet up on the desk. This is what happened on some of them. Others sat there, and the patient come in, and the doctor said, how do you do? What's wrong with you? That's a good way to start. What's wrong with you? And then the patient would tell him, well, I've got some pain in my stomach, or I've got a headache. Then the doctor reached for an Atlas axis set, and he said, now I'll tell you. You see this little bone right here? Now it's pressing on your spinal cord, and the dura mater and the pia mater is all mixed up, and the hypothalamus is sending out a lot of messages. You boy, I mean, that's impressive. You think this didn't happen? I can tell you it did. I want to tell you that it didn't take me a week to have that class so confused they almost left the college. Until we got down to the business of teaching those patients what chiropractic is. It's not just bones and ligaments and nerves. It's an integrated nervous system which can furnish that great intelligence in the body that can keep the person well. That's what it is, and that's what they all want to know about it. How wonderful it is to have the patient, and you've talked to them about these things, and then you put them on the table, particularly the old side posture table. I know that old recoil and side posture is kind of put in the mothballs. We're going to bring it back, though. And then you get your line of drive, and man, you give it to them. Wham! And then you put your hand on the patient and say, do you feel you're warming up? Why, yes, I'm getting warm every place. You're being turned on. We're turning you on. Do you feel that warm flow? Yes. Oh, my, I feel that. You just lay there a few minutes and close your eyes, and pretty soon you come back and they're gone. A brand new world. What a fabulous thing it is to be turned on. Now, some of us come to college because of something happening in chiropractic, or somebody in the family in chiropractic. Some of us come to just make money because we feel it's a good business. And that's not wrong. The laborer is worthy of his hire. But some people come to college because a miracle happened. And I'm sure that those few, and I'm included in this group, really have an edge when it comes to standing your ground. How does it feel to be told you're only going to live a week? Well, it's a little terrifying. Unless, in my case, I was so ill, I wasn't afraid I'd die, I was afraid I wouldn't. I had the last stages of diabetes mellitus. My blood sugar was 475, which made me the sweetest thing on the street. Except I wasn't feeling so sweet. I had such pain that was like dropping curtains of fire around the room. Somebody walked in, I'd scream. Now, I had been told by the best physicians, and I was in the drug business that time, so I had the best physicians. Dabbled in pharmacy for a few years, in the early days. I knew I was going to die. I didn't know just when, but they told my wife, get his affairs in shape. We got about a week left. I was feeling full of fluid. Urine was turning black. And then my father, who was a rather stubborn man and unsophisticated, said to me, why don't you try the old family chiropractor who saved my life during the World War I? And I said, why should I go to some old quack when I've had the best doctors? And then he said something that made me think. He said, how can he do less than the rest have done? Because nothing is still nothing. And while the chiropractor was about 150 miles from Keithburg, Des Moines, Iowa, and we had very little money, they loaded me on a train, which ran in those days, when they had trains. They loaded me on the caboose of a train, and they shipped me to Des Moines. Hadn't had my clothes off for 2 or 3 days because of so much pain and everything that I just didn't care. And when this man met me at the station, a man of close to 80 then, I hadn't seen him for 20-some years, what he said to me I'll never forget as long as I live. He shook hands and said, hello, Clay. Well, what kind of flowers do you want? Isn't that great? I thought, there's the intelligent approach. That's the guy that's going to fix me up. Already he's got me buried. Now, diabetes at that stage is medically incurable. And there isn't a textbook from Boyd on down that won't tell you that's it. Now, it's a strange thing that innate didn't know that. Educated said so. Educated proved so. Educated had the books to tell so. But innate didn't know that. And the chiropractor, who was ignorant and unsophisticated, didn't know it. Now, he didn't take any urinalysis. I said, aren't you examining me? He said, well, haven't you had that done? Well, yes, I'd had it done. He didn't ask me about my blood sugar level. He took me to his home and took some pictures, and I said, well, what is wrong? There's nothing wrong with my back. You're taking pictures, all this. What's up? He said, you just let me go ahead with my work. And then he put me on a bench, which was no terminal point table. I'll cue you in on that. And when he come down on me, I thought, well, this is the way he's going to finish me. Man, what an adjustment. He studied at the old Universal down the road here, and at that time, the final examination was the imprint of the umbilicus on the floor. "16 days went by. That's not very long, is it? A couple of weeks. And I came home, just like I am today. Now, innate knew it should be that way. Then I went back to my physicians, who were delighted to see that I hadn't passed on. Personally, they liked me. And they made some examinations. They said, well, you didn't respond to any of these things before. He said, you're clear. What are you taking? I said, food and water. Anything I want to eat. They were dumbfounded. I mean dumbfounded. They said, this just can't be. They were going to hold a conference. I said, I went to a specialist. They said, my God, he must be really something. And we said, you got to find out about him right away. So they got the big book out, and they said, what's his name? They're thumbing through it, and I said, oh, he's not in that book. He's a chiropractor. You ought to have seen the icicles around that office. 4 feet long. And then they made the classic remark, if they had have only known what they said, and if I'd have only known then too, when they said, it sure is wonderful what nature can do once in a while. Oh, boy. Now, medical men start out as general practitioners. They work as interns. They start out with bedpans. They do the lowly work. Slowly they grow. And as their skills develop, they decide what they're going to do. They're going to specialize. And they do. And I'm not selling short any specialist, because some of these medical men that we like to knock are awful handy to have around under certain circumstances, believe me. But they work towards a goal of specialization, and one day, Dudley White, heart specialist. Now, you don't take a bad rectum to him. You take your heart to him. Because as far as you're concerned, there is nothing else. Now let's see how it works in reverse. The chiropractor from this college and others graduate as a specialist, the greatest in the world. They can't wait to become a general practitioner. Isn't that interesting? And they're dabbling with everything they shouldn't dabble with, weakening all the time the faith that they have in the one thing that can help them. A patient needs food. He needs nutrition. He needs light. He needs water. He needs rest. But of all the things he needs is a nervous system that works. A guy that's hungry and has his nervous system working is a lot better off than a guy that's well fed with a subluxation, to a point, of course. When Dr. Carver, the late colored fellow who was one of our greatest scientists, was asked, how in the world can you do so much with a peanut? Remember now, this scientist made everything out of a peanut, thousands of products. And then he said, if you love a thing enough, it'll give up its secrets. Think for a minute what he said. If you love a thing enough, it'll give up its secrets. If you love chiropractic enough, you will find the secret that will turn most people on. Because from the minute that patient comes through that door with this kind of thinking, you're going to get that patient straightened out. Your intelligence from above down will transfer that something. And there is a transference in our philosophy. Make no mistake about it. The man who stands on his ground, philosophically, can do miracles because he has the cooperation of the patient. And the patient believes. And if you think believing doesn't have a lot to do with everything, you're wrong. Of course, when it comes now to the point people say, well, you're just great psychologists. The little baby that Joe straightened out here the other day, I'm sure that child understood his lecture on psychology. So don't let him give that stuff to you, that all we do is work them out. One of my patients went to one of the finest neurosurgeons in this town, a man that I highly respect for his line. He'd been a patient in this man's office before he came to me. He had about as bad a looking cervical spine as you could possibly imagine. All kinds of arthritic spurs, axis twisted way over to one side. You'd look and you'd say, this is impossible. No use taking this case. But you don't do that. So I adjusted the man, and the man had a hand that was all curled up, and his arm was a little bit shrunken, and he couldn't use his arm about like this. But he came in because he had headaches. And in the interview, I looked this arm over, and I asked him about it. And he told me, and I said, well, when I turn you on, no telling what'll happen. I don't promise you anything in this office except to turn you on. You got to take care of that the stuff yourself. You're the one who gets you well, not me. I'm only the in-between. The real doctor's inside. He said, I understand that. So I adjusted this man, and lo and behold, the hand began to open, and the arm began to work. Then he could play golf. Well, he still had quite a bit of pain down below here every once in a while, and I said to him, if it'll make you feel better, why don't you go back and have your neurosurgeon look at that again? I think he might be interested in what he finds. So this man went back to this famous neurosurgeon, who was the best around this part of the country. And when he examined the man, he was dumbfounded. He said, what in the world has happened to your hand? He had the records, and he made the exam, all the big terms of which I understand none of them. And he said, oh, that. He said, I'm playing golf. He said, playing golf? Oh, yeah, every day. He said, I got a little trouble here I don't want you to look at. He said, well, what happened to you? He said, well, I went to my friend, the chiropractor, Thompson, up here. And he said, he worked on me, and he said, look. And this neurosurgeon almost left the ground. And rightly so, if you'd looked at his neck. He said, look here. I can give you 1,000 reasons why that man should never have touched your neck as a chiropractor. But how can I do it in the face of such evidence? How about that? How can I do it in the face of such overpowering evidence? There it is. We have no idea what will happen when an adjusting thrust is given. The romance, the wonderful feeling of a patient coming in sick and tired. Do you know what it means when a person is sick of a subluxation, sick in a subluxation for years? We often think in terms of just the patient, but nobody is sick without affecting many others. In the family, in the community, in the church. Any place you go, a man who is ill is affecting not only himself, but those around him. Let's take the nagging wife. A husband comes home, she's got a headache. She's laying on the couch, maybe reading, I don't know, love stories or something, you know. The dishes are in the sink. The kids are running around and they're dirty. No pep, no nothing. Headache, backache, stomachache, terrible. So he finally drags her into the office, and she becomes a patient. And you make the examination, and you make the announcement. Mrs. Jones, we found some trouble that we're going to correct. Your power in your body is not working the way it should. You're about 70% going. How'd you like to have the other 30% in there? Sounds silly, doesn't it? So you make the adjustment. And this woman, whoa, what happened? Her hair begins to raise bushy-tailed, you know, and all after a few adjustments. And the husband who said to you, my God, I hope you can do something with her. She's so bad, nobody can live with her. And after 6 adjustments, he comes back and said, my God, you've got to do something, Doc. Anybody can stay with her. There you are, see. What does it mean? All of a sudden, she begins to perk up. She changes the kid and beats the heck out of him. She washes the dishes. She gets the dinner. She puts a candle on the table. She starts doing the things that she should do. The whole family is changed. Perhaps now they'll go to church and they'll enjoy that. Maybe some social function. Maybe she gets out once a night a week with the girls. She likes it now. She's living. She's doing things. All because of a little simple adjustment that turned her on from 70 to 100. Let's take the fellow on the job. And we so seldom think of this. The breadwinner. He's a bore in the shop. People despise him. He's always got a sour stomach. He's always finding fault. He gets to work late, and the very minute the clock hits 5, he's gone. He gets home, and he's crabby with his kids. He doesn't take them any place. He's always feeling bad, but he can always get a can of beer and get in the big chair and feel sorry for himself the rest of the night. His wife is so sick of him that she'd like to wake up some morning cutting his head off with a dull butcher knife. And then somebody at the shop says, Bill, I don't know about you. Don't you ever feel good? Ah, he said, what's feeling good? Then he hears about the chiropractor. And he goes down and he listens to the story. And he gets examined and he gets an adjustment or two. And something wonderful happens. Doesn't have his headache anymore. At the job now, he begins to take an interest in the work he's doing. And the boss looks at this rather suspicious, and he says to the supervisor, better keep an eye on Jones here. I think he's ready for the butter net, butterfly net. What do you mean? Well, look at him. That's not the same guy we had in here before. Look at him work. He was here 10 minutes early, and he can't hardly run him out of the shop. Now the guy's taking an interest in his church. Going to take the family to church now. Takes his kids fishing. He's now a human being. He can't stop working. He's got an energy. He doesn't understand it. But innate knows. Innate now can take that body and use that body as it should be used. Oh, chiropractic is wonderful. It is really wonderful. We talk about techniques. All techniques are good for some patients, and all techniques are bad for some patients. You've just got to fit it in. And I can give you an example now. I'm privileged to do this, since there's nobody in here can know whether I'm telling the truth or not. But I traveled with B.J. for years. And B.J. was a fantastic man. What a shame you all couldn't know him. Although I'm sure that he's here today, and he's saying now, give him hell, Clay. But now that he's gone and he won't be embarrassed, I want to tell you a story. Some of you have heard it. But it shows, in spite of our great philosophy and the great men behind it, how all of us have a weakness at times to say one thing and do something else. Even the great ones. Now, Bill Werner, who's passed on years ago, was one of the greatest chiropractors that ever lived. He was from New York, and he was a graduate of the Logan College. Well, in the old days, they used to say, oh, Logan, huh? You know, boy. So Logan cussed Palmer, and Palmer cussed Logan. Now, they all were doing the same thing. They were putting life into people, restoring energy in the body. But because they did it by different methods, each one had his own bag, as pretty much we have today. Techniques. Gonstead technique, Thompson technique, etc., etc., etc. All of them have their place. Nobody has any corner on health, let me tell you that. But anyway, at the Academy of Science, B.J. and Bill Werner, and yours truly, was the program. And B.J. gave a fiery talk on upper cervical technique. There was nothing else. That was in the old days of HIO. When at the Palmer College, if you were caught looking at a sacrum, you were a chance of getting expelled, you know. You didn't have to adjust it, just look at it. And then Bill Werner got up and he made a fiery talk on basic technique. That was the bottom of the spine. And when I got up, I said, I think the gentlemen ahead of me have eliminated the entire spine between the top and the bottom, but that's what I want to talk about. And I got hell from B.J., of course, when I got off the stage. He said, you shouldn't have said that, Clay. And I said, it's true. But now watch what happens before the clock strikes 12. Both of these men knew that I knew what they knew, so they weren't embarrassed. Bill Werner had me adjust his atlas, and I adjusted B.J.'s ninth dorsal the same night. And interesting, isn't it? See, they knew that I knew. Didn't make any difference. So regardless of techniques, the thing that we guard with our lives and our office is our philosophical thinking. Chiropractic is nothing without it. With it, chiropractic is everything, because you have that one thing that nobody else has ever had before, and can certainly never have again, because the knowing of innate is eternal. I just wish that each one of you could get that feeling, as you most certainly will, of knowing that from within you are strong, and that the knowledge that you have, uneducated, the study of innate is not an educated thing. It's the thing that you reason. It's the thing you're born with. It's the thing that runs us, that rules us in every possible way. In the face of all kinds of sickness and health adversities, it is the one thing that has brought more people back to normal than all the pills, all the potions, all the surgery that the earth has ever seen. Now just imagine, you're in this great oasis of sick people. They're crying for help. And yet there are some who must say, we mustn't advertise. We've got to get in a little office and wait for somebody to come in, because we're so great they'll know we've got, and they're going to come in. Oh, no, they won't. Oh, no, they won't. They've been reading the ads on the antibiotics. Now remember that the medical men don't advertise except every day, every hour. That's all. So we're poor little people. We're afraid to advertise. I don't mean dirty advertising. I mean honest, clear-cut messages to people. Testimonials. We used to send them out here to PSC, had them testimonials. And the doctors used to send them out by the hundreds. And they got tremendous results because they were stories of people who got well. Let me ask you something. Those who would oppose any kind of advertising outside of mouth to mouth. Now, I don't advertise. I never have. I started a small practice and that grew. Joe Stuckey never advertised in his life. But when a man goes out new, he has that right. If he's been in practice 20 years, he has that right, if it's honest and above board. My God, they advertise bacon, they advertise beans, they advertise furniture, they advertise automobiles, they advertise medicine, they advertise surgery. Chiropractic can't be advertised. Isn't that interesting? You're not allowed to tell people what you are and who you are. I say by any means, fair or foul, if it's clean. I think what B.J. said. Early to bed, early to rise. Work like hell and advertise. Oh, it's so wonderful spending these minutes with you folks. Ideas are floating around here. Many of you have your thoughts. How am I going to do it? Where am I going to get the money? Where am I going to set up? I can tell you right now, it's all planned. It's all planned by a power bigger than you right now. N8 is saying to some banker in that town, when Jim Jones comes in, I've got to give him the money. I don't do, but something just tell me I've got to give him the money. Now, the first thing to do when you set up a clinic is go down and get the banker in so deep he can't quit. That's the first rule. Get them in so deep they can't quit. And I want to tell you something else. When you read the bankruptcy list, it doesn't make any difference. In fact, it's more dignified to go bankrupt big than it is small. You're not such a chiseler. So go out there and plan your clinic. Be sure and have 5 or 6 Thompson tables in it, though. I'll tell you that now. But all joking aside, I am sure that our lives are planned as sure as you sit in those seats. There's a reason why you came. You listened. Or somebody listened. Money, you'll make it. Money can only do you so much good. Nobody takes any with them, you know, because the taxes take it before you go. You'll find that out. Seriously, your life is planned. There's no mistake while you're here. All of you may be mistakes, but there's no mistake that you're here. Accidents, all kinds of them, you know. But it's such a wonderful, comforting thought to know that there is a universal intelligence guiding your every hour, your every second. And when you come to this wonderful college, it's the beginning of a purposeful life. Life is meant to serve. And you're in that now, right up to your neck, whether you know it or not. Oh, I used to get a kick out of it when I was here in the faculty and the graduation came around and an enthusiastic student would run down the stairs with his diploma in his hand and said, "Boy, I got her made, now look at that." I thought, you poor sap, you haven't started yet. You've only got an invitation to hard work. You don't know that yet. When we start a thing, we know very little about it. When you came into Palmer College, your knowledge, if you hadn't been into chiropractic before, was blank. Your every hour, your every second. And when you come to this wonderful college, it's the beginning of a purposeful life. There are so many people today that say, I wonder why I was born. What's life all about? Life is meant to serve. And you're in that now, right up to your neck, whether you know it or not. Oh, I used to get a kick out of it when I was here in the faculty and the graduation came around, and an enthusiastic student would run down the stairs with his diploma and said, "Boy, I got her made, now look at that." I thought, you poor sap, you haven't started yet. You've only got an invitation to hard work. You don't know that yet. When we start a thing, we know very little about it. When you came into Palmer College, your knowledge, if you hadn't been into chiropractic before, was blank. Out of the, we'll take a large circle, just picture a circle. Now, when you came to school, you were just a dot on the on the blackboard in that circle. And when you went to the clinic and saw them give them an adjustment, you said, "What's that?" Well, he's giving an adjustment. And when you went through and watched somebody read with an NCM, "What's that?" "Well, it's an NCM." "Well, is that so? What's that do?" "Well, briefly." But as you become more educated, you begin to change your whole thinking. And as that spot gets bigger and bigger, it can never reach the periphery. But what we're attempting to do is expand that thought and expand that education till one day you begin to feel that something that Stuckey talked about, that sureness from within, that Reggie Gold has, and Dr. Price has. I owe much to Dr. Price, because he's the one that gave me my philosophy. And he's the one man around here that you can listen to with authority, believe me. Not that there aren't others, but God bless him, he's the guy that turns them on. How fortunate you are to have giants at the head of our departments that can give you that something. That's something to go out with in the field and battle a sick world, which is truly sicker today than it's ever been. The United Nations, there's hardly a man in it that doesn't have ulcers. Does that tell you something? The world is ruled by sick men. It's your job to clean up this world. And I'm quite sure that this class and this group right here is going to have a very, very big part in it. When we think of the body regenerating itself time after time after time, there's something that came up not long ago in an article I read that really makes you think. A person's in an accident. I have quite a scar here myself. Was cut with a bottle in the face many years ago. Many of you have cicatricial tissue around of your bodies. Every 7 years we say we have a new body. How does innate know to put that scar back in place every 7 years? Isn't that something? How does innate know to make those exact duplicates every 7 years? I once knew a chiropractor who used that business. And I wanted to know how long he had to stay. The patient said, "Doctor, how long do I have to be under your care?" And he said, "Well, you get a new body every 7 years, so I think you ought to stay for me for one change." Some thinking, huh? When a patient comes in and asks me how long he has to stay, I said, "The rest of your life." He looks kind of surprised. And I said, "Because my job is to get you well, not just to get you well, but to keep you turned on. That's the main purpose, to give you life." I tell my patients, chiropractic is like food and like water and like rest and all. It's a way of life. It's not a treatment. It's a way of living. How wonderful it is at the end of a tired day in a chiropractic office to get an adjustment yourself. And you feel, "Oh boy, no, is this what they've been getting all day? Oh, isn't this wonderful? Go to bed, no aches, no pains. Appetite good. Head is clear. So, in closing, just let me say, that it was a privilege to be here with you. I've hoped I've helped you. I hope I've helped your thinking. And in the future, plan to turn them on. Thank you.